This is in the Gulf of Mexico, out of Tampa, Florida. And you can see this orb coming up out of the water. Yeah, that's the sea. And you'll see it starting to fade, but look behind it. You'll see another one coming up from behind it. And it gets brighter and brighter, and they come up out of the water. Back in April, just after Easter, I was asked, I was doing a festival in Wilmington, North Carolina, and my son organized a Skywatch on Sunday night. So there were 75 people that showed up. And I told the whole group that at 8:30 it would start. And I suspected we'd see them come up out of the ocean, because I've been able to film them coming out of the water quite regularly. I've done it in Florida, and if you look, when that camera moved up, there was one up above. So needless to say, the whole group went crazy there. Basically, I told the group 8:30 they would appear, and I've been pretty fortunate in being able to predict the time within a minute or two on a pretty regular basis. One of these videos, you can see these orbs jumping great distances down the coast, and it'll come back. It'll leave as a white streak, and it comes back as a red streak. This is a close-up shot with a cell phone, and it's been stabilized, so you'll be able to see what it looks like. That's what these orbs look like. I'm filming that from my back pier on my little pond here with my cell phone, and you can see it vanish and just goes out of sight. These things up here are ground level. Sometimes they're small. The closer they get, the smaller they'll be. The further away, the bigger. And I think there's an intention there, because I've got literally thousands of videos.
He has been studied by NASA, the CIA, academics, and the Defense Intelligence Agency. He maintains a personal relationship with a group of unidentified flying objects he defines as orbs. His name is Chris Bledsoe, and he is considered the world's most credible UFO experiencer. Chris began seeing these orbs shortly after having his second near-death experience. He had his first one when he was only a child, and today he's going to share some details that he has never shared before.
The first time I was shot with a shotgun from 6 feet away when I was 10 years old. I was shot point blank, blew a hole in me this big, right in this left shoulder right here. And I have lead, you can see right here, and you can feel it all in my body. The 17 pieces still there that they can't get it out. They didn't want to mess with it. So that was the first time. So I was dove hunting with two young boys. We were 9 and 10 in the back of a cornfield in the middle of nowhere. And it was an accident. One of the kids' gun went off and shot me from behind. And next thing I know, they were crying and screaming, and I'm laying there bleeding to death, and a hole in my back this big. Just 10 years old, little guy. And this farmer overheard the yelling and screaming from a half a mile away and come driving down through the cornfield, ran into the woods and grabbed me up like a sack of potatoes and threw me over his shoulder, put me in his old farm truck, drove me to the hospital. And I remember being in outer space, seeing the earth from above, looking back down. And I was in this clear bubble, like it was, you couldn't see the walls, but they were there. And I'm looking at earth from up here. I remember seeing everything from out there. It's like I wasn't in my body while they were operating on me. I was out in space looking at it. And it was peaceful. It was like I could see everything around me. I'm standing inside a bubble up way up in space, and I'm looking at the earth, and I'm looking at the stars, and suddenly I'm in pain, and I'm back in reality. And then I wake up in the operating room. I was basically paralyzed on one side for almost a year. I walked with my whole left side, my hand just about dragging the ground. It was that. Actually, they had taken me out of the operating room several times. And they'd run me back into x-rays to find more lead. They'd put me back in surgery, take me in and out. And the last time they checked, I kind of woke up and I remembered seeing my mother there. And that was a traumatic thing there. I suffered for months and months, years from that. I had tubes coming out of my back for 6 to 8 months, draining and stuff. In 2001, when the financial crisis, because of the World Trade Center disaster, right? I was a builder, building 100 homes a year or more. But what happened is I lost everything. And we're dealing with Crohn's disease growing up from a young person in my 20s, married. When I had Crohn's real bad, I was suffering from Crohn's disease. My doctor referred me, he told me I should be taking this new drug called Paxil, which is a antidepressant, I guess. He was on drugs. Nobody knew it. He was taking pills of some sort and had basically gone off the rails and was prescribing just any and everything to all his patients, just all kinds of medication. And my wife comes home one day and I'm unconscious laying in the woods next door, and they rushed me to the hospital. And what had happened is his daughter had never tested my blood. He just was writing me prescriptions, and he put me on a prescription called lithium. I had no idea what he was giving me, and for what reason I needed that, I didn't. He was just going off the rails. Well, when you take that stuff, it's metal. You gotta test your blood and liver for toxic poisoning. Well, they did just that. He poisoned me to death, and next thing I know, I'm in the hospital and I'm laying under this cover, completely head to toe covered up with a sheet. And I come up out of there, and I was up near the ceiling, and I could see my wife sitting there, and 3 doctors walked in the room and said, "This sure is a shame. This is the 113th patient that doctor has put in the hospital." I was number 113. He put that many people, probably more. I don't know who was after me. But 2 weeks later, he was dead. The doctor overdosed on his own stuff and died. So needless to say, that was what caused it all. And I'm trying to recover from this injury. It ain't easy to get over that kind of stuff. That type of medicine messes with you. And I don't remember anything but seeing the doctor and hearing his name, and seeing my wife sitting there and hearing all the conversation. And then I'm back in my body. So that's about as close to death as I got there. When this thing happened to me in 2005, when I had this near-death experience, I didn't write about this, but I'll put it out there. When I got out of the hospital and I came home, this was in late 05. So it was when the near-death happened, and my family knew that I've never really told anybody. Is after that point, I began to see these beings in my house. And I would tell my wife and children that there was a being that just walked up to me, and I saw it. And they thought, "Well, you crazy, you're seeing things." Just, because of what happened to me in the hospital, I thought maybe I am seeing things. Is it the medicine this doctor gave me making me see these things? But it turned out a year later, it's still happening, right? And it never quit happening. And I would see these beings, little small beings about this tall. In fact, I had a name for one of them, and my kids would chuckle and think that Dad's seeing things again. I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm telling you, I just saw it there." So that is a little information I've never put out there. This is for your show. And my wife and my children documented that for months. They would film me on their iPads or something when I would tell them what I was seeing. And they clearly couldn't see it, but I could. And I never stopped seeing it. I still do. And it comes in orbs. It comes in ports where things appear out of thin air and hit the ground in front of me. I've seen that happen. Birds, creatures flying just appear out of nowhere and disappear right in front of me. It just like appears, zooms by, and disappears. I filmed that. I filmed something this week. I got a new camera sitting right here that I'm working with, and it's a very high-powered camera, new. And I filmed something flying around. I don't know what it was, but it was several of them very close by that only that camera could see that I couldn't see. And it looked like these little objects would swim through the screen. And I suffered with Crohn's disease, and it got worse and worse by the time 2007 rolls around, January of 2007. I had just come through a near-death experience the year before. I actually had recovered enough to try to do a little work, and that's what a 3-month job led to the fishing trip. I was fishing with my son and 3 guys. They were fishing, I wasn't. I walked away, and when I come around the corner and up the hill, there were these balls of fire, big ones, like in the daytime. It was just after 5 o'clock in January. It wasn't dark. They were big as a house, like 40, 50 feet around, glowing, flaming red, orange. And 4 hours later, I come walking back to the fire thinking 20 minutes had passed. And there had been a manhunt that had ensued, and with these 3 guys and my son, and now he's lost. And when I found him, he was in shock because these beings appeared to him and had him pinned down in the woods where he couldn't move, and they wasn't hurting him. It just scared him to ever live in death. But that's when it all happened in 2007. And it never quit happening, AJ. I came home. I told the world about it, and of course, I thought they would all want to know. I no longer had Crohn's disease. When I came back to the fire, there were 3 guys were standing there, and my son was missing. And I'm like, well, you won't believe what I just saw. And they're like, where have you been? We've been looking you all night. And I'm like, there's no way. I've just been gone 20 minutes. No, look at the time. And so I realized then Junior was missing. So they told me he'd been gone 2 hours. He'd looking for me. And when I found him, he was in shock. I got him back to the fire where they were standing, and then everything broke loose. 3 big 40-foot glowing white balls of light came down out of the sky and landed about 75 yards away across the river. So pandemonium struck. We flew up out of there in my truck, leaving coolers and fishing poles. When we got back up to the top of the hill where I'd gone earlier and ran into these orbs, they were still there. They wasn't gone. And so there went another 10 or 15 minutes of the worst moaning and crying and carrying on in my truck. The world's coming to an end. It was incredible what was going on. But what happened, I took these guys home. I won't shortcut this part. I took these guys home, and Chris Jr. and I, we had a fight. They had a fight on the way. Who was going to go home first? Actually, the one guy actually won out, and we had to go further away to drop him off first because they thought it'd be the last time they'd see their wives, children. And so Chris Jr. and I made it home about 11:30. And remember, I walked up the hill. It was 10 after 5. Now, by the time I get back and drop these guys off and get home, it's after 11:30 maybe. So it was an all-night thing. And Christopher was panicked, locking the house down, turning all the lights on, locking all the doors, turned the outside floodlights on. I'm in my study looking on the TV trying to find an invasion on the news. That's what I thought. And there was nothing. It was crickets. And Christopher come in there and, what, have you found anything, Dad? And I said, no. And about that time, my dad, I live out at that time I was living beside my father out in the rural area. It was the country years ago, farmland. And he had been there all his life. So I grew up, we were living next door. And he had hunting dogs. Still has a kennel there. My mom does, big kennels. He raised dogs all my life. Had 100 at the time sometimes. He traded them and sold them and raised them for people, boarded them. And so the dogs went nuts. And I went outside against Christopher's wishes with him holding to my shirt to see what was going on with these dogs, because I thought they were somebody who was breaking into our shop. We had a workshop out there, a big garage with boats and hunting and fishing gear and equipment and tools. And it's near the dog kennel, so I thought somebody could see it and was breaking in. Long story short, we snuck out there, and that wasn't what it was. The dogs were looking the opposite direction, barking at something behind the kennel in the woods. And I had this outside dog, a 110-pound Chesapeake Bay retriever with me, and I sent her in the woods after what was in there to run them out. And I ran back around fast as I could, knowing the direction she was going to go. And because she left me going towards the north, and I ran towards due north hard as I could, and turned and ran up against a tree. And Christopher had me by the shirt, and I pulled her loose from him and thought that he had just turned her loose and was coming on up behind me, but instead he ran toward the house. He didn't want no more of what was happening. He'd already had enough that night. And when I ran up to this big oak tree and stopped, the dog's coming to me. I just know if something's fixing to come out. I can hear the dog coming. And I turned around to look to see if Chris was coming up behind me, my son, Chris Jr. And when I did, he wasn't there. But there was this little creature. I'd say it was 3.5 feet tall, maybe 4. I don't even think it was 4 feet tall. It was glowing a soft white, like the moon color. It had deep red eyes about the size of 50-cent pieces or a little bigger, maybe an inch and a half around. And it had this, what looked like a triangle on its chest up under this glow. It was a dark triangle looking shape. And I just knew I was in trouble. I thought immediately, what went through my mind is I'm gone, or I'm dead. And I was in fright when I saw it. And I was against a tree, and this thing's 3-4 feet behind me. So I didn't want to turn around and look, I'm coming towards it. So I sucked myself against a tree not to get closer to it. And I turned real easy and dropped my arms. I said, I surrender. I mean you no harm. And this loud voice said, you don't understand. We're not here to hurt you. We're here to help you. And about that time, my dog is coming right on closer and closer, and she comes out of the forest when this entity just vanished right in front of me. And the funny thing is, the dog ran on out of hearing, and I just shook my head and thought, oh my God, I don't need to tell Chris Jr. about this. He's already had enough excitement for the night. So I went back to the house, and it was the next morning when I got up that I had no more Crohn's disease. And that was the beginning of the whole thing. But what happened was it never quit coming. It was in my house the next day. It was in the forest. It was around me. These owls, which have become a major part of this experience. When the owls come, the orbs come. There were 3 owls living in the tree. I never heard an owl there. Now I got 3 hooting every night over my house. And orbs floating through the forest, and orbs inside the house. They would appear and flash, and then these shadow beings would walk down through the house. My wife was in tow behind them, following them through the house, seeing this stuff. And I got a call. I didn't report it for the first year because of the church community and my community, and my mom and dad and everybody and the whole brother I knew thought I was dealing with the devil himself. You're dealing with Satan. So they were telling me how I was endangering my children and bringing the devil into my house, and it had them terrified and scared, and it was just a big mess that went on there. And all the while, I'm like, I was praying to God. I wasn't praying to the devil. I don't understand. And so that's how the name came about on that book, because it's been a whole lot more of a blessing to me than it's the people that's been hard to deal with, not the phenomena. This was in '07 when I told about this, and thinking the world was going to be happy, and it was going to really be something. We've discovered we're not alone, right? Um, the next 5 years become basically hell for me and my family, the community, the church, the relatives, and I was pretty well known in my community. I mean, I big house builder and always in the paper and on TV, and so and my wife's family are in the main Pentecostal Holiness Conference. So they had the full weight of that behind them, just pretty serious people. For the first 5 years, it was terrible. My kids would go to school and come home. My little girl was 10 years old when it happened, so she was terrified. The church was really protecting her and my kids, which that's what they were doing, what they thought was right, and I was really upset that it got so bad that even somebody called social services on me, thinking I was endangering my kids and my family. Had to go through all that mess. So my whole world was closing in again. All this wonderful thing happened, but I've got this mess. And so on Easter Saturday night before Easter in 2012, I had really had all the guilt I could take about what happened with my children and my family and how bad it had gotten. And so I went outside that night and shouted to the heavens. And I'm seeing these beings a lot. I'm seeing them, a shadow go across the yard. An orb would flash, and you could see them run across the yard. They look translucent when they do that. And orbs always around and over the house, and running cameras and stuff. I could never get a picture. I could never share with anybody for the first 5 years other than my children. I could go out and we'd all see it. But if I brought some stranger over or somebody else, they wouldn't know. It would never appear. But that night I went out and I shouted to the heavens and I said, "Thank you for healing me. Um, thank you for healing me, but I'm done with this. I don't want to ever talk about this ever again. My children are worse off than ever now because of me and all this." And I said, "I'll never talk about it again. I'm just done." So I went to bed, and at 3 o'clock in the morning, I heard this loud voice that just said, "Arise." And it was in a manly, deep voice, but so loud it woke me up from my dead sleep till I'm set up in my bed, and I saw the clock, it said 3 a.m. And I said, "Who's in my room?" I heard that. It was a man. It sounded like a deep baritone singer. And nothing. I began to see this movement, and I don't know what happened to me. Next thing I know, I'm fully dressed and I'm outside. Whatever they can do to you, they had me in tow with them. So I'm fully dressed at 3 a.m., shoes and I'd sleep with just nothing on but my underclothes, right? So I've got a coat, shoes, I'm outside, and it's April. And I'm behind these three shadowy figures, just in tow with them, and they stop just short of the dog kennel to where it all happened before, with 5 years earlier, where the being appeared with the triangle on its head. And this figure turns around and hands me this thing that looked like it looked like the size of a pack of hamburgers, peel shaped like a tube with round ends, but it felt like a living animal. It had hair, prickly. It felt like it was alive. It was warm, but I didn't see legs or head or nothing. So the minute it hit my hands, I dropped it on the ground because I didn't know what it was. and it kind of prickled my hand. So this voice said, "You pick this up, you must keep." So I reached over to get it, and when I looked, there's nobody there. I'm in the woods by the dog kennel, standing there holding this thing in my hand, and I don't even know what to think. So I reached up and opened the kennel and set it in there and closed the door. And I thought, well, I'm keeping it. It's safe. I don't know what it is. I'll figure it out later. The very second I did that, this blast of wind, and that was the most powerful thing I have to say of that whole experience. This wind, it wasn't in the whole trees around me, it wasn't the whole forest, it was a directed blast of air in front of me, hit me so hard it blew me over backwards, as in I'm falling completely backwards to the leaves on the ground. I see what looked like a huge 1,000 pound or bigger bull. It was a bull. It ran over me, and as it went over me, I could see through it. It was translucent. I could see the stars through it. I thought that was the wildest looking thing, seeing these stars inside that creature, but it scared me beyond. It was so fast and so powerful that it frightened me. But when I hit on my back, I rolled to my stomach to get up and run, and there wasn't no going anywhere because there was no more cow there. There's a woman now about 6 feet, 8 feet from me, just out of arm's reach. I'm on my knees. She's floating about 3 feet off the ground. Her feet's up about my chin. I'd say that was about 3 feet from my knees up. And she's got this beautiful glowing blue aura around her. And the circle on the ground was about 15 feet around, or 16, maybe a little bigger, of light. I'm inside of that. And her dress is like a Roman dress with a collar, and her sleeves are out to her wrists and down to the tops of her feet, barefooted. She's floating. And she looks at me and she said, "You know why I'm here." She said, "This is your burden. You must bear." So she was really chastising me for me quitting that night. I knew that's what she meant when she said that. "You know why I'm here." Because whatever had happened 5 years before, they implanted me with the desire to tell the world. You got to tell it. You got to tell it. You got to tell everybody. And that's all. I was like Richard Dreyfuss making mashed potatoes and in the movie Close Encounters, when he's building a volcano or Devil's Tower on his kitchen table. He was obsessed with trying to figure it out. Well, that's where I was. And she said, "You got to tell the world what you know, and I'll help you, and I'll always be there with you. And from this point forward, I'll let you take and video us and share our presence with others." And so I told that in 2012. And let me tell you, magic started happening. At that point, I started being able to invite people over. Like John, he came in 2015. And he and Victoria, and we got to see something on the river, and I knew it was there. None of this was ever possible until she came. When that lady came, she changed everything for me and my whole family, and it got the attention of the highest authorities from other governments along with ours, and a lot of people, academics. So this is 2013, a year later. The lady comes again on Easter. I write about this in the book, not to get into too much detail, but she came the first time. She said, "I'm going to help you." And I began to be able to take photos and share with others. The next year she came, she told me about a date in 2026 to when there'd be a big change, which I put in writing and gave it to a friend from NASA, which took it to the Pentagon. That's what he said he wanted it for, to share with a couple of Air Force generals what the lady told me. But magically, 2 weeks after she came, is when my dog was bleeding to death, and there was a journalist there, Grant Cameron, and some of my kids and friends, and they saw this happen. She was bleeding to death with a big 1.5-inch gash across her neck. And when I touched it, it vanished. The whole wasn't there, everything vanished. And they were filming it, blood everywhere. But that happened after she came the second time. That was pretty crazy. That year, 2013, this was April when she came again on Easter. So it's now October. And Dr. Diana Pasulka, a religious scholar who lives about an hour and a half from me here from Fayetteville, lives in Wilmington. She and I were talking a lot then, and she was trying to get me to meet a couple guys that are writers in Hollywood. And I told him, I said, look, I don't care nothing about being on TV. I had enough of that 5 years before with the Discovery Channel. Nearly ruined my life. I said, it'd take a miracle. It would take a sign from the heavens, from the lady, to make me want to go meet these guys. That's what I told her. It was on like a Monday when she called me. You got to come meet them. They're leaving this weekend. They'll be in LA. And they made the movie called The Conjuring, right? It was a very famous movie. So all week, nothing. She'd call me. You got a sign? No, ma'am, I don't have a sign. You sure got to come meet these guys. I said, if I get a sign, I'll come meet them. So on Thursday night, and they're leaving Friday evening, right? Thursday night, it rained for 2 days. We have all this on video, and you can see when my daughter drives up, the grass is sparkling wet. It'd been raining for 2 days, but it was like a foggy day. And I was a smoker then. When that happened, I quit smoking. Within 2 days, I never smoked again from that point. But I told my wife, I said, I'm going out to smoke. It was 9:30. We were watching TV in my study. So I hit pause on the TV. She got up and went to the kitchen. I went outside on the patio. I'm standing there with a cigarette in my hand, and I'm looking out across the backyard, about 75 yards out there in the dark. I saw what looked like a bottle rocket, the little sparks from one of these tiny little rockets, you'd hold in a bottle. That's what it looked like, that color red, and they kind of went out and went different directions. I said, well, that was weird. And my wife saw it through the back door and opened the door and said, what's going on with that tree out there? I said, I don't know, but I see it. And about that time, it just went poof, lit itself inside on fire and was burning through the top of the tree about 15 feet up.
This tree just spontaneously combusted in our backyard. This is so weird. And there's Emily coming home.
Yeah, I told Stephen to come out and look at it. It hasn't been thundering or lightning or nothing.
No.
Today, y'all.
I don't even think it rained today. There we go. We've all been standing out here looking. Ran as fast as we could in the backyard. The tree just spontaneously combusted.
It burnt the whole inside out of this tree. And the weird thing was the tree had looked dead for 2 years. I mean, lifeless. The whole 40 foot of the top fell out of it and broke off. And suddenly it starts blooming and flowering again and turns into this big bushy tree all over again. When I left from there, it was humongous. And we documented this. And there was nothing in the middle. It was literally the outside about 1.5 inches thick around the whole outside and no center part of that tree at all. Never seen nothing like it. But it became a very active place where we had this smoke that was intelligent. I always thought it might have been an elemental or something, but it would fly by you. You just see the smoke, and I'll send you a couple pictures of this, where it would go around and wrap itself like a candy cane around the tree, and there'd be faces in it, and magic was happening, orbs appearing around the tree, people coming and bringing clothing and hair and pictures, and it became a site of healing for a lot of people. And I don't want to sound like a prophet, so I kind of shy away from doing all that, right? I don't want to feel or people to think I'm something I'm not. I'm just a messenger. I don't know why this is happening. It is happening. We've been able to share it with everybody, not just people physically here, but people in other states, in other countries. I've been able to, so far, and did it last night, and to a couple in Texas, Houston, and in other words, have them go outside and look a certain direction. And when I ask it to appear, it does in both places at once. And we've documented that many times. And it's so complex. There's words can't even describe what we're dealing with. I have no idea. I just know it doesn't want to harm us. In my opinion, I think there probably are negative beings out there that you'd want to steer clear of. If you live a negative life, well, you invite that kind of thing to you and around you, and it can whisper in your ear. But if you live a good, positive life, I believe it'll bless you. So I can't label anything. I can just tell you observations. And another pattern, AJ, that I've seen, there's one major common denominator that a lot of people will tell you, about 90%, is it always comes with a near death or with trauma and suffering. You lose your mama, or your grandma, or your aunt, or your wife, or a child. I get it all the time. People write me. My dad passed away and these orbs started appearing. Tell me, what is it? And they'll be terrified. I think that they're here and always have been here, and they probably created us if the truth be known, or maybe they're working for some higher intelligence that looks after us. But I want to stop short of labeling anything because I really don't know. I'm just studying it and documenting it and trying to share what I've found out.
Do it one more time. Oh, there's something right on the water. Right on the water. Thank you, thank you.
That's what we're looking for.
If you could flash for us, and I'm getting it.
That's your orb there.
Right there. It's still in the camera. It's still in here.
That's what you're looking for. You see all these freaking places.
Thank you.
So,
oh! Here, someone needs to look through this. It's very bright. Thank you. Oh, you see it? It's right there. You see it?
That is an orb.
That is definitely an orb. I'm tracking it here. Do you want to look?
Yeah, can you still see it?
Let me find it.
I lost it.
There's a beautiful orb right there tonight. That ain't even zoomed. It's in the cloud or going through the cloud. It's to the east of me. Man, is it bright. I gotta get my camera down. I had it at a weird angle. There's the power line. Top of the pond. There's the orb. Thank you for that. If I had my new camera, I could really have something beautiful here. Of course, I'm thrilled to get this. It's heading east. Maybe a tiny bit northeast. That pole there. There's almost there now. There's three of them. There's one further offshore. Look how rapid they've gotten. You see that? Crazy. I'm telling you what it is. Now twice, three. See them three?
On the water.
Look how they're moving about now. You see that, Chester?
Yes, sir. I got it.
They're getting closer. They are.
Yeah, I see it.
Above us.
It's getting brighter.
Yep. Above us,
And they're coming closer.
The ones on the water are coming closer. They'll come in and out. They'll spread apart. They'll line up.
Oh, look at that.
Look, wow. That was incredible what I'm seeing there. Man, one of them was bright white then.
Listen. pretty big one. Right
Got one straight above us.
Yeah. I see it right there.
Yep.
Oh man, that thing
Wow.
like it shot to the left a little.
Wow, that was a huge flash.
On the water?
Yeah, did you see it? Look how huge.
Yeah, I'm watching the orbs.
Watch them. Watch them, Chester.
Come on in closer, guys.
Now they'll got the flash.
Every now and then it'll flash very bright.